Hi, and welcome to OCD Whisperer Podcast.
Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for having me. Hello to everybody tuning in.
So I'm so glad that you're here. I really wanted to have today's episode be just a little bit different, which is I wanted to talk to you about anxiety more on a broad term, just generally anxiety. I definitely focus on OCD specifically. I also though think that there's a lot of folks out there who have anxiety, period, and maybe it meets clinical criteria, maybe not quite, but in general, I think people experience anxiety. And especially with this year and everything we've been all dealing with, and the changes and adjustments that everybody has had to make, I think that it's really, I think, warranted and helpful to kind of broaden our discussion on just anxiety overall in general. And so in broadening our discussion, one thing I do want to kind of put out there now for my audience is that whatever you're going to hear, just make sure you're listening with that ear of, you're not taking on any recommendation or strategy and using it as a compulsion, but that this is really today a topic about anxiety overall. So with that in mind, I have a couple of questions. And the first question I have is, what would you say are some of those symptoms, or thinking styles, or kind of what happens when somebody has anxiety? If you can share some of those things that somebody could pay attention to and be like, oh yeah, I've experienced that. If that does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So some just general, signs for anxiety you want to pay attention to. I don't know anybody this year in 2020 or maybe around the world who hasn't experienced some of these symptoms. In general, just being, one of them being just on edge, um, feeling really uncertain about what's to come. And because of that, you feel irritable, you feel restless. You just kind of are walking on pins and needles. And this uncertainty can feel very anxiety provoking. It can show up and manifest in your relationship. So you might be much more quicker to get upset with somebody. You have a lower tolerance or threshold for interactions with people. This could be people that you're living with, especially if you're having to quarantine. It could be just in general, maybe at work, if you are, part of the frontline staff who have been continuously working during this time, you might find yourself easily fatigued more than normal, because you also have not only the physical tiredness, but the mental tiredness too. So easily fatigued, feeling restless, on edge. Many people also are experiencing difficulty concentrating on tasks, on goals. Your mind is just constantly maybe going blank. And so, a lot of people report feeling like a mental fog, brain fog, not feeling like you are really fully with it. Maybe some memory is like short-term memory. You might have forgotten, like, what did I do this morning? What did I do yesterday? And then just also then feeling adrenaline rush for tomorrow, but because you don't really feel like you know what's to come, you're feeling an overwhelm of emotions. So that might also then start manifesting physically. So you might feel like tension headaches more often, muscle tension, stomach aches. A lot of people report a lot of gastrointestinal issues, difficulty controlling your feelings, your thoughts, or your worries. So this feel of like a loss of control of self. A lot of people report may resonate with this, like, I just don't know myself anymore. I don't know who I am right now. That's a very scary feeling. And then also some other signs are like sleeping problems, eating, you're have difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, eating, your appetite changes. You might be eating more because you're trying to comfort yourself. You might be eating less because you're so stressed out. And, so it looks different for each person. So some of those are just some common signs to look for, that you're probably feeling anxious. And so it's a good indicator that you need to kind of pause and notice that that's what you're experiencing versus just thinking something is wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
those are some
you
some
mentioned
quick signs.
definitely some interesting, I think, things that people may or may not always hear, like the irritability or the fog. And it's true, right? If you're somehow just off, it's really easy to want to jump in and assign meaning to that, or try to figure out what's wrong, when kind of almost what I hear is, if you put it back in context of kind of the year we're having, and the impact that that's having on everybody's mental health, and that the typical things you've done needed to change. So kind of the normalcy of what you had before, your routines, your lifestyle, I mean, all of those things have had to take a really big shift all around. And some people, I think, still haven't quite found their new groove, so to speak, or their new way of being, or the new routines or patterns or lifestyle. So it's definitely, it's very impactful. um
Right, right. And we talk
so
about
yeah.
just with any change, regardless, good change, bad like whatever you want, in life, if you've had a loss, if you've had a wedding, if you just whatever type of change, you move houses, locations, um, it takes typically at minimum 6 months for us to adjust to something new. um,
Mm.
it doesn't stop at 6 months, but at minimum, just to even get your feet under you again, that feeling of like, now we're 6 months kind of post pandemic. So a lot of people have found a little bit of maybe more stability than they did back in March, back in April, June, July, August. You're kind of starting to say, okay, this is maybe going to be my new normal. And here are some couple things that have worked for me. And you're now able to maybe start inserting some treatments or some techniques to help you keep going.
Yeah, then it's an interesting point you made, that it takes about 6 months. I don't know that I clearly was tracking that, or really kind of thought about that. But it's true, any change we go through, it takes us time. But I didn't know that specific kind of time measure, that at least minimum 6 months. I know certain things like grief and loss, for example, definitely, I know a little different data there, but yeah, but it's true. I mean, any shift and change, exactly. Overall, as humans, we definitely, all of us tend to need a little bit extra time than not, to really process and adjust and orient and figure things out. Yeah. So with that, then, so my second question that I had for you that I wanted to ask is, kind of taking it all in context, what could be some strategies or tools that maybe you could suggest that folks could do to help their anxiety, or even help with finding some sort of or better stability, if you will, with kind of moving forward with the day to day.
Yeah, some more formal treatments. I'll talk about formal treatments and then some at-home stress release techniques. But some formal treatments, one, therapy, just recommend seeking professional help. You don't have to wait until you're in crisis to get support. When things are falling apart, actually, it is probably in your best interest to proactively seek professional help as early as possible. For some people, medication is very helpful and will continue to be helpful. Depending on how comfortable you are, but I know some people use CBD oils, CBD treatments, support groups, and especially right now online, you can find tons of support groups. They could be a double-edged sword, but for some people, again, you kind of have to practice different things and see what works for you. But support groups can be incredibly healing, and having some shared experiences with people. And there's tons of resources now online for that.
Mm-hmm.
Some at-home, more informal kind of release techniques would be. Some of my favorites are mindfulness, just, kind of bringing it back to focusing on the task at hand, trying to connect with the present moment. The quickest way that I like to think about that is just engaging your senses, at least 1, 2, 3. So as long as you can kind of, that looks like turning on music and dancing. So you're incorporating sound along with movement. It might look like taking a nice bubble bath and doing some aromatherapy. So you're filling up the bathtub with some lavender sea salt, and so then you're engaging your scent of smell. The magnesium, helps with the muscle tension and relaxing, and so it kind of gives you that mindfulness feeling. Some dietary adjustments would be helpful, just paying attention to what are you consuming. I know for myself, I was consuming a lot of snacking junk food, and I don't respond well to that, and it definitely added to my fatigue and my mental fog. So I just came off of a 21-day plant cleanse, and I feel the healthiest I've felt all year. So just paying attention, what are you consuming, what are you putting in your body? Exercise, movement. I just do some 20-minute YouTube follow along movements at home. So you can just do a quick Google search on YouTube and find some sort of movement. If you can't do 20 minutes, start with 5 minutes, 5 minutes of stretching, and then gradually increase from there. A lot of free information is out there. So, of course, doing your research to make sure the people that you're listening and consuming information from are reputable, credible. But there's tons of books on education on anxiety. So whether you want to consume it through an Audible book, a hardcover book, a podcast, YouTube, tons of therapists now are showing up on social media platforms. I mean, you really can find a lot of information for free there. And journaling, a lot of times just journaling out your thoughts, writing what you can control, writing what you can't control, and kind of just tracking your thoughts daily. Being able to just, put pen to paper and have that mental release can be very cathartic. And it's just a matter of practicing these things as much as you can, more days than not, and that you'll find the benefits from doing that.
Yeah, I like that you just said that, more days than not, and kind of balancing it, because I think it's true that kind of the experience is that sometimes you can feel like I can do this, and I have, okay, I'm going to do these new routines or add these things to create a routine, but then also having that kind of self-love and compassion of, and if I have a day or an evening or whatever, a week where I'm just not with it or there, or, not motivated to do it, that's okay too, right? To just give yourself that permission to have your experience without having to judge it or critique it. Right. And just, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Those are also really great ideas. And I think that's a good list. And I think that it makes sense too, again, if you're dealing with anxiety, that, like you said, kind of seek different things out and see what resonates for you and what you seem to be drawn to, and then start to incorporate it little by little. And if somebody doesn't have anything kind of set in terms of a structure or routine, looking at how can you bring some things in. I know a lot of times that, when somebody gets stuck in a certain kind of pattern, it can be hard to break out of it. Like you were saying with the working out, like even 5 minutes of stretching, which is true. But we also do know that, at least from everything I've read, that the more you engage in activities again, you actually get better a little bit faster. So even if you have your off days, that's fine. But then make sure that you do put some effort into having on days. And once you do that, usually, after a month or two, that becomes your new habit, like you were saying with change, right? And then you adjust, and then it gets easier and easier with time. But in the beginning, like with anything, it all takes a little effort and a little work.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just takes a little bit goes a long way. So just even adding up, you know, creating maybe a plan. One day you're going to take a bubble bath. The next day or the following day, you go on a walk. Then the next following day, you create some space for meditation and breathing, and then just build from there. So, give it on day, off day, on day. And then slowly you'll start feeling the energy again through those things to, be able to create a more consistent plan now that we're 6 months post the pandemic. I mean, we're still in it, but like at the initial
the initial shock and all of
right.
that wore off, where we've all kind of settled in a little bit more now. So yeah.
Right.
kind of for the next stage. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And can you please tell everybody, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Eidit Choochage, and I have a website, just eiditc.com, my Instagram, Eidit Choochage, and have a podcast called Therapeutic Life Healing for Women. So those are some spaces to find me, and look
Yeah,
forward to
and I will
connecting.
definitely make sure to include all that in the show notes, so everything will be spelled out in there and available. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and for all the strategies and tools that you gave us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for having me, Christina.
Absolutely.